For years, Edd China was the calm genius behind the bench on Wheeler Dealers, the one who made impossible repairs look effortless. Then one day, he vanished.
I'm afraid it's true, and I'm really sorry. After 13 years of making Wheeler Dealers, I'm now going to be leaving the show.
This is the story of what happened after Ed walked away from television, disappeared into his workshop, and quietly began building something no one saw coming. They opened Edd China's garage, and what they found inside will leave you speechless. The truth, it's far stranger than fiction. The sudden exit. In March 2017, Edd China shocked fans of Wheeler Dealers by announcing his departure from the long-running and beloved automotive series. For over a decade, the tall, affable mechanic had been the heart of the show, renowned for his calm explanations and deep-dive mechanical repairs. But after 13 seasons and hundreds of car transformations, Ed decided to step away. And it wasn't because he'd lost interest in cars. The reasons ran deeper: creative differences with the new direction of the show, and a conflict over what Wheeler Dealers was becoming. The show, originally a low-budget UK series, had evolved into a global success. It paired Ed with co-host Mike Brewer, with Mike handling the buying and selling of used cars and Ed managing the mechanical overhauls. What made Wheeler Dealers stand out was Ed's detailed workshop segments. Viewers saw the before and after. They learned the process, the nuts, bolts, quirks, and workarounds involved in breathing new life into a used car. That transparency, that respect for the craft, became a cornerstone of the show's identity. But change was coming. In 2017, Discovery Channel announced that production of Wheeler Dealers would shift from the UK to the United States, under the control of a new production company. Along with the move came a new approach to how the show would be made. According to Ed's departure video, which racked up millions of views within days, the producers wanted to cut back on the workshop segments. Less of the in-depth repair footage, more streamlined edits to fit a faster pace and tighter runtime. Ed didn't agree. In the video, he explained his reasoning with calm but firm conviction. He said the show's educational value would be diminished by this approach. The risk, he argued, wasn't just to the format, but to its integrity. If viewers were no longer shown the work in sufficient detail, the show would drift towards superficial entertainment rather than a genuine documentation of car restoration. For Ed, that was a red line, and rather than compromise, he walked. Reports from inside the industry at the time suggested tensions had been building behind the scenes for a while. The shift in production also meant a shift in priorities, from mechanical detail to wide appeal, from UK roots to American Polish. Ed, who had built his on-screen persona around transparency and hands-on guidance, didn't see himself fitting into that future. His departure caught fans off guard. Reactions were intense and immediate. Comments poured in on social media. Some angry, some supportive, many simply heartbroken. To many longtime viewers, Ed was the soul of the show. The quiet authority with which he handled everything from seized bolts to entire engine rebuilds had made him a rare kind of TV mechanic. Someone you believed, someone you could learn from. Mike Brewer also responded publicly, expressing sadness over Ed's decision and reaffirming his own commitment to continuing the show. But even as he welcomed a new co-host, former Formula One mechanic Ant Anstead, there was no question that Wheeler Dealers would be different moving forward. The chemistry between Mike and Ed had taken years to build. Their dynamic wasn't something easily recreated. Ed, for his part, didn't lash out. He avoided the drama and refrained from throwing blame, instead offering fans a calm and reasoned explanation. But the implications were clear. The version of Wheeler Dealers that had made him a household name was no longer a place where he could do what he believed in. There were also personal consequences. According to reports in outlets like The Sun and Metro, both Ed and Mike received backlash from fans, some of it vitriolic, some of it misdirected. Ed later acknowledged that his decision had stirred strong emotions, and while he stood by his choice, the fallout wasn't easy. In interviews that followed, he described the exit as sad but necessary. A line had been crossed, and for someone who valued quality above all else, There was no turning back. And then, he disappeared. For nearly a year after leaving Wheeler Dealers, Edd kept a low profile. No new shows, no major announcements. Fans wondered, what was he working on? Had he burned out? Was he done with TV altogether? The answers would come, but not yet. First, Edd China needed time. Time to reflect, recalibrate, and, as we would later discover, build something new behind the closed doors of his own garage. Into the void. It was a curious and uncharacteristic absence. Edd had long been a visible figure in the automotive world, not just through the show, but via public events, interviews, and appearances at car shows across the UK and beyond. So when the updates stopped coming, speculation filled the gap. Had he quit television for good? Was he burned out? Was he working on something in secret? The questions piled up, but answers remained elusive. What is known about this period is minimal, but revealing. Edd didn't vanish completely, he just retreated inward. According to scattered insider reports and interviews from later years, he had returned to his workshop, the same garage that had birthed many of his earlier inventions like the motorized office chair and street-legal sofa. This time, however, there were no cameras rolling, no script, no external deadlines, just tools, ideas, and time. People close to Edd described him during this stretch as recharging. After years of filming tight schedules and working within the constraints of television production, he was suddenly free to move at his own pace. And he did. He wasn't idle, far from it. But his focus shifted. Rather than building content, he was building again for the sake of building. This was a return to first principles, tinkering, experimenting, solving problems because he wanted to, not because he had to. One of the recurring themes among those who know him is that Edd never stopped thinking. Even while out of the public eye, he was sketching, prototyping, revisiting long-abandoned projects. Some of his ideas dated back to before Wheeler Dealers, concepts that had never quite fit into the format of a show, or inventions that needed time and privacy to get right. Now he had both. A few unconfirmed reports at the time suggested he was experimenting with electric vehicle conversions. This wouldn't be surprising. Edd has always had an interest in sustainability and alternative powertrains. Some even suggested he was working on a way to retrofit classic cars with modern electric drivetrains in a way that preserved their character. But these were just whispers. No hard evidence surfaced during that year to confirm what was happening behind those closed garage doors. What did leak out, though, was fan curiosity. Online forums were filled with threads asking where Edd had gone. YouTube comment sections lit up on old clips of Wheeler Dealers, flooded with nostalgia and concern. Some fans speculated he had left the industry entirely. Others believed he was plotting something big, but most simply hoped he was okay, mentally, physically, creatively. That concern wasn't baseless. Walking away from a major show, especially one that had defined your career, comes with fallout. Edd himself later admitted that the transition had been emotional and difficult. Though he remained composed in his public farewell, he had just cut ties with a global platform, a steady income, and a project he had poured years of energy into. It's not a leap to think that time was needed to process it all. There's also the question of burnout. Years of tight production deadlines, pressure to deliver, and being under the scrutiny of producers, fans, and executives can wear down even the most resilient. According to some sources close to the industry, Edd had been quietly expressing frustration in the months leading up to his departure. The creative spark was still there, but the environment no longer supported it. So the garage became a sanctuary. During this period, Edd also took time away from social media. His Twitter feed went quiet. His YouTube channel remained dormant. For someone so closely associated with DIY and transparency, the silence was almost eerie. Occasionally, whispers popped up. A few eagle-eyed fans reported spotting him at local engineering shows or quietly attending classic car meets. These sightings only fueled more speculation. Was he doing market research? Recruiting collaborators? Testing a new invention in secret? No one knew for sure, and Edd wasn't saying. Still, the longer the silence stretched, the more the mystery grew. What was going on in that garage? Was Edd just enjoying a well-earned break, or was he, in typical fashion, reverse engineering something that would surprise everyone? As 2018 wore on, anticipation began to build. A few cryptic updates started to appear. Brief blog posts, mentions in interviews, subtle hints that something was coming. Edd hadn't vanished. He was just working in stealth. And then, almost exactly a year after he had left television, a new thumbnail appeared on YouTube. No fanfare, no hype campaign, just a video titled Garage Revival, Episode 1. The name said it all. But before the comeback could unfold, that year of silence had served a purpose. It wasn't a void, it was incubation. And what had been brewing in the shadows of that garage was about to change everything. The Workshop Awakens. In May 2018, Edd China returned, but not to television. He returned on his own terms, through a self-produced YouTube series titled Edd China's Garage Revival. After nearly a year of silence, fans were greeted not with marketing hype or a flashy rebranding, but with something simpler, purer, and unmistakably Edd. The concept was refreshingly grounded. Find people who had started car restoration projects and help them finish what they couldn't complete alone. Each episode featured Edd visiting home garages across the UK, working with everyday enthusiasts whose vehicles had sat dormant for years. Whether it was due to time, technical skill, or money, these projects had stalled, and Edd was there to bring them back to life. But Garage Revival wasn't just about cars. It was about people. The show tapped into a deeper emotional thread. The frustration of unfinished dreams, the passion behind every oily frame, and the sense of relief when someone finally gets the help they need to move forward. Edd wasn't just fixing engines, he was restoring momentum. The first episode centered around a classic VW Golf GTI, abandoned halfway through its rebuild. The owner, who had done everything he could with limited tools and knowledge, welcomed Edd into the chaos of his half-finished project. What followed was a methodical and honest assessment of the car's condition. Edd didn't play for the camera. He didn't simplify things for the sake of drama. He got on the floor, got his hands dirty, and explained exactly what needed to be done and why. That tone became the hallmark of Garage Revival. It was unmistakably authentic. No voiceovers, no canned music. Just a camera, a car, and Edd doing what he's always done best, explaining complex mechanical problems in plain English. If a brake line was seized, he showed how to free it. If a gearbox was out of sync, he talked through the internal logic of how it all worked. For fans who had missed his deep dive segments on wheeler dealers, this was like a homecoming. The production values were modest by design. Edd was no longer backed by a television studio. There were no executive producers steering the format. No tight broadcast deadlines. He was in control. Writing, presenting, even helping direct the edit. It wasn't slick, but it was real. And that was exactly the point. The response was immediate. The first episode racked up hundreds of thousands of views within days. The comments section read like a reunion. Fans welcoming him back, thanking him for staying true to his style, and expressing relief that his passion hadn't been dulled by the industry fallout. Some even said the show was better than Wheeler Dealers. It was more personal, more relatable, more focused on the why behind each repair. Behind the scenes, the launch of Garage Revival was also a litmus test. According to industry insiders, Edd had been uncertain about whether to return to the public eye at all. The YouTube series allowed him to test the waters without locking himself into a long-term contract. It gave him the space to experiment and re-establish a direct line to his audience, without interference. It also marked a shift in how he engaged with his community. For the first time, fans could comment directly on his work and receive responses. They could suggest cars to feature, techniques to explain, or even point out details he might have missed. Over the next few months, more episodes followed. A Triumph Herald here, a neglected Land Rover there. Each story unfolded slowly and without shortcuts. These weren't flashy transformations set to music montages. These were authentic repairs with real-world constraints. Improvised fixes, stubborn bolts, unexpected snags. The kind of work any DIY mechanic knows all too well. And that's what made Garage Revival resonate. It wasn't about perfection, it was about perseverance. Edd wasn't showing viewers how to build show cars. He was showing them how to get that one job done properly, the kind you've been avoiding for months. In doing so, he recaptured the spirit of hands-on educational motoring content, something that had been steadily fading from mainstream automotive media. It's worth noting that while Garage Revival didn't explode into a massive franchise, it didn't need to. It was a personal project, a way for Edd to re-engage with what he loved while staying independent. And for viewers who had followed his journey for years, it served as a clear message. He hadn't disappeared, he'd just taken a detour. By the end of 2018, Edd had proven he could chart his own course. He didn't need a big-budget studio to stay relevant. All he needed was a camera, a project worth finishing, and a reason to roll up his sleeves. With Garage Revival, the workshop lights were back on, and this time, they were all his. Behind the doors. So after a while, a private tour was organized. They opened Edd China's garage, and what they found inside will leave you speechless. Tucked away behind unmarked doors, past a cluttered driveway and shelves stacked with forgotten parts, is the workshop where Edd has spent years quietly building a world entirely his own. And once inside, it's hard to know where to look first. Against one wall sits the infamous street-legal sofa, a vehicle stitched together from armchairs, suspension components, and sheer eccentricity. Nearby is the motorized bathroom, a fully functioning toilet on wheels, complete with plumbing and a steering column. These weren't just gimmicks for a laugh. They were real, registered vehicles that once toured the streets as testaments to what's possible when engineering meets imagination. But amid the wonder and whimsy, one discovery stood out, and not in a good way. According to those present during a rare private tour of the garage, tucked in a dark back corner was a partially disassembled prototype, once intended for a public demonstration that had clearly gone wrong. It was described as a self-steering bar stool, an experiment in compact personal mobility using gyroscopic stabilization. But the project had been abandoned in what can only be described as a disturbing state. Wires dangled from scorched control boxes. Burn marks blackened the plywood beneath. One witness claimed the lithium battery housing had clearly suffered a thermal event, and charred residue was still visible on the surrounding equipment. No injuries were reported, but the evidence suggested that Edd had narrowly avoided a serious workshop fire. For a creator known for control and precision, it was a rare glimpse into the risks of relentless innovation. As one industry insider put it, that thing looked like it tried to cook itself alive. And even though this is horrible even as a mere possibility, it fits. The garage isn't just a playground, it's a laboratory. Edd doesn't filter his ideas, he follows them. Some become road-legal marvels. Others, like the self-steering bar stool, crash spectacularly in the testing phase. But every bolt, every sketch, every soot-covered prototype tells the same story, a mind that won't stop building. This is the side of Edd the public rarely sees. In the end, he is a solitary inventor, surrounded by experiments that blur the line between genius and madness. And if some of those experiments come with a scorch mark or two, it only proves how far he's willing to go to create something no one else would dare attempt. Reinvention. After the modest but heartfelt success of Garage Revival, Edd China faced a critical crossroads. He had proven that he could go it alone, that his name, reputation, and passion were enough to carry a show without the backing of a major network. But for Edd, reinvention wasn't just about returning to the screen. It was about evolving his role in the automotive world entirely. The time away from mainstream television had allowed him to reassess not just his career, but his priorities as a creator and engineer. While many still knew him as the guy from Wheeler Dealers, Edd had quietly spent years thinking beyond traditional combustion engines. Long before the electric vehicle boom hit the mainstream, he'd been tinkering with sustainable transport concepts, alternative powertrains, and hybrid retrofits. Now, with a platform fully under his control, he could finally take that thinking public. In April 2021, Edd launched a new series on YouTube, Edd China's Workshop Diaries. The format was simple, but the vision was bigger. Unlike Garage Revival, which centered around helping others complete their stalled projects, Workshop Diaries brought viewers directly into Edd's own garage, his private world of tools, projects, and prototypes. It was a return to the kind of in-depth, educational content that had made him a household name, but now with a forward-thinking edge. The show offered weekly episodes, most running 20 to 40 minutes, featuring everything from engine teardowns to electric vehicle component analysis. But what made it stand out was the tone. Workshop Diaries wasn't trying to be a slick, high-octane TV replacement. It was intimate, honest, and deliberately paced. Edd spoke to the camera like an old friend, walking viewers through each step of a project, breaking down not just what he was doing, but why. One early project featured the conversion of an old classic Mini to electric power. It was a proof of concept. Edd wanted to show that electric conversions didn't have to be soulless. That character, charm, and classic aesthetics could survive, and even thrive when paired with modern drivetrains. Viewers got to see the practical engineering work involved, adapting motor mounts, selecting battery packs, wiring up control units. Nothing was glossed over. And the message was clear. This wasn't just car repair. It was sustainable engineering with real-world implications. As the series progressed, Workshop Diaries expanded its focus. Some episodes leaned into traditional restoration work, refurbishing suspension systems, troubleshooting gearboxes, or diagnosing fuel system issues. Others explored more conceptual topics, like developing lightweight body panels from recycled materials or experimenting with regenerative braking systems in older platforms. There were even episodes where Edd tested homemade tools or offered long-form Q&A sessions based on viewer-submitted questions. No sponsors dictated the content. No advertisers shaped the direction. It was curiosity and craftsmanship, uninterrupted. In many ways, the series represented Edd's clearest statement of purpose yet, a blend of education, innovation, and accessibility. He was challenging conventional thinking, encouraging hobbyists and professionals alike to look at their garages not as storage spaces, but as laboratories. The response to Workshop Diaries was overwhelmingly positive. Comments poured in from fans old and new, praising the clarity of explanation, the depth of knowledge, and the sheer sense of calm the series provided. It wasn't flashy, but it was deeply satisfying. Viewers felt they were learning from someone who cared about the future of mobility itself. There was also an unspoken emotional through line to the series. You could feel, watching episode after episode, that Edd had taken time to heal after his departure from wheeler dealers. There was no bitterness, just a quiet confidence that he had found his voice again. The series was therapeutic, a slow, steady reintroduction of a man to the world on his own terms. By the time Workshop Diaries entered its second year, it had grown beyond a niche YouTube channel. It became a hub, a community of like-minded engineers, tinkerers, classic car enthusiasts, and forward thinkers. Edd occasionally brought on guests, sometimes former collaborators or friends from the industry, but the focus never drifted. It remained a one-man show about honest work, careful thought, and engineering that matters. And that leads naturally to the bigger picture. Edd China's legacy. Edd's journey underscores something often overlooked in the fast-moving world of media and automotive entertainment: staying true to your principles. Edd could have stayed with wheeler dealers. He could have taken the paychecks and adapted to a faster, flashier version of himself. But he didn't. He walked away from a successful formula because it no longer aligned with his core belief that the process matters as much as the product, that the how is just as important as the what. That decision, risky as it was, earned him respect far beyond the car enthusiast community. He became a symbol of integrity in an industry where compromise is often the default. His commitment to transparency, quality, and education didn't fade when the cameras turned off. If anything, it grew stronger. Today, Edd continues to produce Workshop Diaries, still diving into new topics, still exploring new technologies, still answering questions that most shows never bother to ask. And for every teenager picking up a wrench for the first time, every garage mechanic struggling with a stubborn bolt, Every engineer wondering if it's possible to bring old machines into a cleaner, greener future. He's there. Calm, patient, and endlessly curious. His online presence is mentorship at scale, a reminder that craftsmanship isn't dead, that engineering is about problem solving, patience, and purpose. Do you agree? Let us know in the comments.